Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Oh, beg your pardon.
And welcome to our webinar, a short guide to CIM qualifications. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. The webinar will last for approximately 45 minutes. All attendees are on mute, so the only voices you should hear throughout the webinar will be mine and the presenters. You'll have the opportunity to submit text questions to today's presenter by typing your questions into the chat box of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation, and we'll collect these and address as many as we can during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. I would now like to introduce Quinton Crowe. Quinton is the Managing Director and founder of one of our CIM accredited study centers. He has over 20 years marketing experience in the insurance, sports, and education sectors. He has taught every level of CIM since 2002, as well as being a visiting lecturer at Greenwich University. He worked in the Lloyd's of London insurance market for 13 years before setting up his own consultancy business in 2000. And this afternoon, he'll be giving an introduction to the different levels of CIM qualifications and explaining how they can benefit your career. So without delay, I'll hand you over to Quinton.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar session where we're going to sort of cover off the basic overview of how the CIM qualifications work and hopefully identifying for you what would be the most appropriate level for you to embark on the CIM program. But let's start by having a little insight about you. All good marketing really focuses around understanding one's customers. So we've got a little poll here, which I'm just going to share with you with 3 key questions, which we'd just like you to answer. The first question deals with how many years experience you have. And the second question, which will come up in about 20 seconds, will deal with qualifications. So if you wouldn't mind just answering one of those 4 that have just come up. And then Sherry will very kindly move us on to the next one. So this is to give us an understanding of how many years experience that you have, and this will give us a pretty good idea. The second question looks at your highest level of qualification. And so Sherry, if you don't mind putting that up. So we've just got a basic understanding here of the results from the first question. And as we can see, we've got a pretty even split. So the majority of, just about the majority, have got less than 3 years experience. So people are about to embark on their marketing careers. And then we've got some of you who are sort of fairly well advanced in your careers. And then obviously got some who are really quite senior in experience. So we're going to cover off the different types of qualification. So let's have a look now at what your highest level of qualification is. Again, if you wouldn't mind just ticking the most relevant box to you, and then we'll be able to have a look at the results. So the first is whether you've got to upper secondary school, that's your highest level, whether you've done a degree at a bachelor's level, maybe it's just at the first year, or maybe you've done master's level or higher. If you wouldn't mind just ticking those off, and then she will give us the results. Degree of trepidation as you're working for technology to catch up. And so yes, the vast majority of you have gone to degree or higher levels. So that gives us a pretty good indication as to where we'll focus our attention on today, as to whether the main focal points of the description is going to give about the courses. And the final question we're going to ask is about your motivation. So in other words, what are you hoping to achieve from doing a CIM qualification? Why embark or what is quite a significant workload and commitment. So again, we've got 5 questions here, and please select the one that's most appropriate to you. This is probably the most interesting one to await the results on. So, okay, then, Sherry, let's have a look at the results. And what have we got? And that's very interesting. So developing your skills and knowledge being the main one. Interestingly, learning the language of marketing. I'll come back to that in a little bit more detail later on in the webinar. Confidence, again, I'll refer back to that. There might be a few surprises here. Networking, and then you've seen a job spec. So obviously the real focus point on here is marketing skills and knowledge. Lovely, thanks so much for that. Sheree, if you wouldn't mind us just reverting us back to the main presentation. So yes, my name is Quinton Crowe, and we've had a little bit of information about my background, but I really wanted to focus on really is about sort of my credentials and the insights that we've gleaned from working with CIM in different capacities. And actually was more than 14 years, because I was in your shoes many years ago, doing I originally started off with the CAM Foundation, which is not part of this presentation, but CAM were absorbed into CIM a few years back, and then embarking on various CIM qualifications before eventually doing a master's degree. But also my organization, we have quite a sizable consultancy arm to the business. So we work with a whole range of very large organizations, and we've had people from a variety of different sectors send candidates to us over the years. So brands that you might be familiar with, such as McDonald's and Barclays Bank and BT, Vodafone, all the big four accountancy firms in the Magic Circle, legal firms, as well as a whole raft of charities, institutions, and small businesses. And so we've got a pretty good insight as to how CIM is being received in these different sectors. And I think one of the things I really want to pick up on is actually some of the changes that have happened to CIM in the last couple of years, and how that has actually benefited the qualifications. We're also in a lucky position that some of our trainers and our consultants are still working on some quite sizable projects. So one, for example, was responsible for the mob campaign at Sainsbury's, which was a big initiative just leading up to Christmas in the UK. And so it's given us some really useful insights as to how CIM is perceived, and actually how it benefits marketers like you guys that are setting out on your careers, or you want to accelerate your careers further. So the key benefits, as we see it from of doing the qualification, really start, I think, with the global recognition. And I know that we've got people today sitting in on the webinar from around the world, and in Asia and Africa. And having had the good fortune of traveling to Vietnam and Nigeria and into Eastern Europe and places like Albania and Bulgaria, I know just how well received British qualifications are. And the CIM, obviously with its more than 100-year history, is the only body with in the marketing community with chartered status. And there's a little bit more to this than might initially meet the eye. From talking to some of our alumni from over the years, having chartered status has given them the ability to, particularly in the B2B community, where they might be working in professional services, to be able to sort of stand up to more senior management, particularly maybe those who are what they might describe themselves as fee earners. So we could be talking lawyers or accountants or architects, where chartered status actually has real significance. And having chartered marketer status gives us as marketers much greater credibility, and helps us sort of get greater recognition and acceptance at a strategic level. So all the programs are ultimately leading towards, if you like, this ultimate achievement of chartered status. We're also in the fortunate position of working a lot with a whole raft of recruiting firms. And what we've noticed as an increasing trend is that the CIM qualifications are being stated more regularly on job specifications. Now, I wouldn't say for a moment that getting a CIM qualification is going to give you a new job or instantly get you a better one. But what we've been told by recruiters is that having a CIM qualification is being used as a filter to clear out a whole raft of candidates who maybe haven't demonstrated the same level of commitment to their industry and to their career progression. So the whole sort of employability aspect has a few more nuances, and I'll come on to that now. I alluded to the fact that CIM has changed quite significantly in recent years, and a couple of years ago there was a major review of the certificate and diploma syllabuses, or syllabi I think is the correct term, and the CIM undertook what we understand to be a very sizable, possibly the most significant research initiative to get a better understanding of what industry really wanted from marketers. And there's a very significant shift in terms of the emphasis, and particularly on strategy and on data and metrics, which I'll go into a little bit more detail later on. And so the relevance to industry of CIM really took a massive leap forward a couple of years ago. And as a result of that, the feedback that we've got from candidates who did the program with us and have advanced their careers has been that they have acquired a whole raft of additional skills. These skills, some of which were specifically as a result of doing work-based assignments. So in other words, quite a lot of the assessment within CIM is about the practical application of theory in the context of your chosen organization. And particularly for us, but it applies, I think, generally for a very significant majority. This is for organizations that they currently work for. It's not totally essential, but it is very useful. So it means that the knowledge that you've got, you're applying in real life context. And this has additional benefits, not least of which is that it enables marketers to talk to senior management within their organizations and ask a whole raft of questions to help them with their assessments. And that only can reflect well on them. So this ability to ingratiate oneself with senior management is a sort of a byproduct of the whole sort of CIM process. And again, this is very much the experience that we've had. And all of which means that the feedback that we've had from candidates is the number one thing that they've achieved from doing the program is building their confidence. Whether this is dealing with senior management, having additional skills, whichever way you look at it, it has enabled them to accelerate their careers. Now, in addition to this, CIM do have a number of additional benefits of joining them as a member. And including of these, there are different regional chapters. So you have international chapters as well for different parts of geography. But one of the things that we really make a big deal of when we're advising our candidates to think about doing CIM qualifications are the benefits, particularly of attending various events that CIM run. So your local chapters will be putting on really useful events. Sometimes they're quite small, almost like little master classes. Sometimes they're really quite sizable. In fact, my team were only talking earlier today about a visit to the House of Commons, which was incredibly well received by the candidates that we took along there. Then there's obviously a real opportunity to network and build up not just a group of people who have gone through the same process as you, but it's a sort of talent pool that you can tap into as your career progresses. So again, the feedback that we've had from talking to our alumni has been that as their careers have progressed, the network of people that they've met through doing CIM qualifications has given them access to maybe new agencies, new specialist deliverers, maybe even new jobs. So please don't underestimate the importance of that network. I know it scores quite low on some of your priorities, but it's actually been very significant in terms of the feedback we've had from candidates who've actually completed the program. CIM also offer a very significant library service, which is very extensive, and that's not just loaning books, but if you're doing research, maybe for one of your assignments, or perhaps more significantly, in your work, and certainly I still use it in some of the consultancy projects we're involved with, there is a huge body of expertise that you can tap into both at the human level and at a sort of resource level. CIM also provide various additional content. There's a very good publication called Catalyst, as well as the blogs and other forms of sort of social media activity. And there's also a mentoring service that you can tap into with senior managers who've been there and done it, and you can tap into. So enough plugging of CIM. Let's go on now and have a look at the suitability of and the progression of the program. So basically there's 4 levels of qualification. And the foundation certificate in marketing is sort of the entry point for many people. It doesn't require any academic demands. It's basically open entry. And it's ideally for people who've got no or very little marketing experience. Maybe you found yourself in your very first marketing job and you might be working for quite a small organization and you just want to have a better understanding of marketing, or maybe you just want to get into marketing and have, maybe from a totally different discipline, or maybe you're still in the latter stages of school or maybe university and you just think, actually, I'm quite interested in this marketing malarkey. Maybe there's something I can embark on. So it's a pretty basic, gives you the course of essentials of marketing, and we'll go into the detail about the program and how it's assessed in a moment. But the next step on the stepping stone, if I can get this to work, is the certificate in professional marketing. And the certificate, as I said, was updated a couple of years ago. And it's really for candidates who maybe have got a degree, possibly not with any form of marketing in, who've started on their marketing careers and maybe working in a larger marketing organization, or who've been given some marketing responsibility and just really want to know how to actually do the fundamentals. So there's a slightly greater emphasis on doing at certificate level. And then we go on to the professional diploma. Now this is for individuals a little bit more experienced. Ideally you've got a degree in marketing, but it's not essential. You could have the certificate, but you're more likely to have maybe 3 or 4 more years experience under your belt, and you have got a title which maybe has got in a sort of senior executive, or possibly even at a manager status if you're working for maybe some slightly smaller organizations. It is much more at a sort of operational level, and it's getting you to look at marketing and apply the different tools that you've learned and see what you can actually learn from the application of these marketing tools that you're learning in the class. And the final level, which I'll touch on, although my brief isn't to go into any detail today about it, is the postgraduate level, which was really for individuals who are at a more senior level, who are possibly thinking about going into the boardroom. Ideally, you should have a CIM diploma already. It is a master's level qualification, and being slightly controversial here, I would suggest it's possibly slightly mistitled in that it slightly understates really what it is. Postgraduate is, I would suggest, gives the impression that it's something that you can do straight after university. It is not. You really need, I would suggest, in our experience, about 5 years management experience under your belt to get the most out of doing the program. So let's get into the detail. The next slide is slightly overwhelming. So just to give you a quick overview of the whole program, this is slightly overwhelming, this particular slide, but it gives you an indication of all the course modules for all 4 levels. So let's break that down into its component parts so it's a little bit easier to digest, and hopefully this is going to work. Before we get onto that, I really want to just briefly touch on the fact that we've got a variety of key elements that we're working to here. The first is that there are just 3 exam boards a year. Now this is quite significant because for all of you who are now thinking about doing CIM qualifications, the next realistic exam board you're working to is December. So for the majority of study centres, they will be starting to deliver courses from September, I should say, but it is possible to start earlier, I know, with some organisations, but the reality is that the next board will be December, and then there are boards in April and July. And you might be asking, well, why can't I work towards July? It's simply because the typical delivery process is a sort of a minimum of 12 weeks. So, and there are registration deadlines as well. So there might be an opportunity with a couple of study centres, but it's very short now, the amount of time that we've got between now and the first week in July when we actually have the assessment. So realistically, the next exam board is December. There are also a number of different assessment methodologies, which I'm going to go into a little bit more detail in a moment. At the basic level, there are exams. so at the certificate levels, the core modules are assessed through multiple choice exams, so they are relatively straightforward to pass, and the pass rates are significantly higher than the work-based assignments. So those work-based assignments, depending on level, become ever more sophisticated. But the emphasis here, as I alluded to earlier, is that these assignments are based on your chosen organization. And that's actually quite significant, because it enables you to apply your theory, or the theory that you're learning in class, to the real world, and particularly to your chosen, maybe your employer, or to the chosen organization. So let's break this down. I'll quickly go into each of these levels. So the foundation certificate has had a minor change recently. There's a mandatory module, which is called Marketing Principles, and then you have a choice of 2 electives. So in order to get the qualification, you need to have passed 2 of these modules. So of those electives, you can either choose Customer Communications or Digital Essentials. And digital has been introduced at this level relatively recently, and you can choose between the 2. Now, something to bear in mind is that each module is effectively a qualification in its own right. So you would, if you pass the module, you would have the right to have an award in whatever the module title is. So if you're somebody who likes to collect lots of pieces of paper or lots of certificates to put on the wall, this is a good way of doing it. But just to recap, the suitability at this level is for people who are relatively new to marketing or want to put a toe in the water, and maybe this is your first marketing job. The knowledge and skills that you would have at this stage, all you're going to be doing is building up basic understanding of key marketing principles, so that you just understand maybe what the 4 Ps of marketing are, or how marketing fits within an organization. And also just understanding some basic principles of how marketing fits into the day-to-day practice of the way organizations function. There are, as I say, 3 modules to complete, and you have a couple of electives to choose from. But in terms of exemptions, something just to touch on here, there is a list that you can obtain from CIM. Your chosen study centers can obtain this for you as well, to identify those courses that you might have done at universities where exemptions apply. Now, it's not necessarily so relevant here, because you're more likely to move on to the higher levels. So let's now talk about the certificate level. So the professional certificate, just to recap, the suitability is for candidates who have got a degree, not necessarily in marketing, and are now working in a marketing capacity. You might have a title, something like maybe marketing executive, and you will be working on sort of real-life marketing activities. And what you will learn through this is some key tools in marketing, and then how to put your marketing communications tools together effectively into a coherent plan. So you'll have an assessment of your first mandatory module, which is called Marketing, through an online examination. It's actually multiple choice, which is relatively straightforward. The real challenge with this level is the second module, Integrated Communication, which, as I alluded to earlier, is a work-based assignment, and the workload is, from our experience, quite a step up from the first module. So just be sort of forewarned of that. And then you have a choice of 2 electives. So to get the full qualification, you need to have passed 3 modules in total, the 2 mandatory ones plus 1 of the 2 electives. And again, you can go down a digital route, or there's a customer experience route. And not surprisingly, the vast majority, certainly the candidates we work with, choose digital. But the customer experience module is extremely important, I believe, in its own right. And we're finding that actually quite a number of our clients are using this particular module as an in-house training program, which is a nice byproduct for us. So let's go on to the diploma. And this qualification, again, the same format as the certificate. There are 3 modules that you need to complete. 2 mandatory ones, but you'll notice the word strategy has started to appear. So the suitability for this level is ideally for people who've got a degree with some degree of marketing involved with it, And ideally that you are now working at a more of a sort of a marketing manager level and got, from our viewpoint, a few years management experience under your belt, certainly a good few years of practical experience. There are variations depending on the type of organization that you may work for, and our advice generally is to talk to study centers to get their advice as to what levels they think is most appropriate for you. We'll come on to that in more detail a little bit later on, because I've got some fairly strong opinions about that. But the entry point for this is to make sure that you've got a good understanding of core marketing theory that you should have gleaned at certificate level or from a degree course, which enables you to do the core first module, which is strategic marketing. Now, originally these modules were designed to be independent of each other, but again, our viewpoint, for what it is worth, is that we generally recommend that you start off with strategic marketing. And that requires you to put together a strategic plan for your own organization. And that would typically be in the form of an 8-page plan, which you would take into an exam. And the way we like to describe it is that in that exam, you, to all intents and purposes, are defending your plan. You're being tested on a whole raft of different aspects of the syllabus, but being able to know how your plan would really play out in reality. And we think it's a very good way of preparing candidates if they're having to present their marketing plans to more senior managers. And I just want to emphasize the word strategic here as well, because strategy obviously is an area that maybe is not automatically associated with marketing. It's traditionally been seen or perceived to be more of a tactical affair. So again, part of CIM's review of the syllabus was to get marketing to be taken more seriously at senior management level. So the word strategy has appeared more significantly throughout the whole program. And so it's getting marketers to think beyond just a one-year typical cycle and to think more into the longer, particularly in the medium term, but even to the long-term impact that marketing has on their organizations. The second module is a real focus on data and numbers. And again, there's been a perception of marketers over the years that we've been a little bit flaky when it comes to numbers. And this module directly addresses this. Now, as a generation coming through, you're at a huge advantage compared with where I was many years ago when I was embarking on my CIM qualifications, in that data is far more readily available. The digital marketing revolution has meant that we have got more data possibly than we really know what to do with. But it as an opportunity for marketers, it's really serious, really significant, because it enables us to demonstrate return on investment in marketing activity, which again enables us to be taken more seriously and make us more accountable. So the Mastering Metrics module, which again is a work-based assignment, is a really significant change and really addresses many of the criticisms leveled at CIM over the years. The Digital Strategy elective and the Driving Innovation elective, again, a little bit like certificate, there has been a significantly higher demand for digital strategy. But the way I would like to stress this is that the digital side of things is looking not just at all the digital tools and how they work, but how you can embed digital into your overall marketing activity. So it's looking at both off and online activity. And again, this is a personal view, but one of the issues that we had a few years back when digital marketing was really in the ascendant was there was a body of opinion that thought that digital was going to make traditional offline marketing redundant. And that has not been the case. And we're seeing an increasing number of candidates coming onto our programs who have got a strong digital background, but really want to see how digital works in a broader context. And maybe they've hit glass ceilings in their careers, or maybe the technology that they've been working on has become obsolete. Either way, seeing digital in isolation from a personal point of view is far from ideal, and I think this is where CIM has made great strides. Having said that, you can choose individual modules if you want to just, let's say, focus on digital. There's nothing to stop you now with the digital program, but what we've actually found in the practical reality is that most people tend to do the whole program rather than isolated mixes. And the Driving Innovation module is also worth just spending a little bit of time on. It is an excellent course in its own right to get marketing at the forefront, not just of new product development, but getting innovation as a cultural issue driven and riding through an organization. And we're very fortunate that the guys delivering driving innovation for us, this is their specialism as consultants. So we're in a nice position there, and we found it's been extremely well received from employers and candidates alike. So a little bit about progression and a little bit of advice there. There are obviously clear stepping stones that we picked up on earlier on in the presentation. But generally we'd say that if you're coming in at the foundation level, then there's no real issue about moving straight onto certificate level once you've done foundation. They move from one to the next quite easily. Our advice generally when people have completed their certificate, even though they might be full of enthusiasm for the results they might have achieved, is that they then think about maybe taking a year or two off before moving on to diploma level, so that they have enough time to reflect on what they've learned, apply it, and then they're ready to come into diploma level. I wouldn't say it's absolute, but it's generally our advice. And then the real big gap is between diploma and postgraduate. And again, our advice is to make sure that you take a few years off between diploma and postgraduate. Probably even in 3 or 4 years to get the most out of it, simply because there's it's a pretty intense program and there's a lot of application to your own world, and the more access that you've had to senior management decision making, the more you're going to get out of the program. So that's just a little bit of personal advice. I know different study centres will have slightly different views on that, but that's certainly my point of view from my own organisation. Now, the next thing I want to do is just to come on to a couple of case studies, and particularly, we've got two here. One is Claire Bates. Now, Claire completed the diploma and postgraduate programs with us, but the thing about Claire was that her route was not typical, or not what you might expect it to be. Claire was working in a relatively obscure, quite small organisation. She is the only person in her whole marketing team. The business that she works for is turning over quite a reasonable turnover, but she is a one-man marketing team. And despite all the challenges that she faced, it took her a couple of years to complete the program. Nevertheless, she came out as the top global student for the toughest module last year at the postgraduate program, for which we were very proud, but obviously she was as well. But the point I really wanted to emphasize here was that for her, she had family issues, work issues, all of which had an impact on her studies. And secondly, she didn't come from what you might expect as a big, fast-moving consumer good FMCG brand. It was quite a convoluted process. And nevertheless, she ended up as being the top global student last year for that particularly very tough module. So, there's hope for us all. And she's a delightful lady. And in fact, we've invited her to come back, and she now talks to the next generation of our candidates coming through. And the next person I want to talk about is Sarah Hernandez. Now, Sarah actually joined the diploma program with us over 10 years ago. She is a remarkable woman, and that when she first came on the program, she was effectively a PA working in the hospitality industry for quite a small organization. She was effectively looking after a very charismatic, sort of maverick boss. And we sort of kept very close contact with her over the years. And she got through her diploma program, and she did absolutely brilliantly at it. But it wasn't until a few years later that she managed to get an opportunity to go into the tech sector. And Sarah then landed on her feet. And to cut a long story short, now 10 years on from doing a CIM diploma, she is the Chief Marketing Officer for VE Interactive, who are one of the fastest growing tech companies in London. And she has been voted in the top 100 most influential tech marketers in the whole of Europe. So here's somebody who's now, she's heading up, she's Chief Marketing Officer for a very, very fast growing company. She has a team of 35 marketers working under her. And when we asked her to come and talk to some of our graduates last year, the advice that she gave and the insights that she gave was that actually a lot of her success was down to not just the confidence, but some of the key models that she learned on doing the CIM diploma all those years ago. And she's applied those models rigorously through her career, and this is where she is now. So it's just to demonstrate these are real life people who have enjoyed great success in what they're doing, and there's precedent for you all. Now, a couple of things I just wanted to pick up on, which was to do with current trends. And again, what we've seen over the last 10 years, there's been some quite big changes in the marketplace. And the real opportunities, as we see it, are not just in the traditional areas that you might think of with FMCG, and maybe some of the big brands or maybe some of the big agencies. So real opportunities to focus on are professional services, whether it's lawyers, accountants, architects, and whilst it might seem a little dull, these are areas which, from our experience, are growing very rapidly. Similarly, the charity sector, the demand for marketers and qualified marketers, we've noticed an increase, and possibly something that you might find interesting was during the last recession back in 2007, 2008, there was a huge increase in demand from the charity sector, which really surprised us. So whereas the supposedly more commercial organizations were cutting marketing budgets, the charity side actually increased, and similarly with small to medium-sized businesses. So a couple of trends just to share with you. So next steps really is just to, find an organization, find a study center that might be most appropriate to you. And there is a link there, and I know that you'll be given further follow-ups from the CIM team. But just to finish off on it, there's some FAQs, which just prompt questions that you might want to ask. So these are ones that we're picked up on, and I know that the team are taking questions at Moore Hall. So if we'll pick up on some of those in a moment. But here's some FAQs just to kick things off. The first is how long it will take to complete the program. Well, the foundation certificate is typically 6 months, but you can spend a little bit longer on that. And the certificate and diploma programs are typically a year, but as I've already mentioned, people like Claire, they dipped in and dipped out for different reasons. So there's 3 exam boards a year. So typically most people get through it in a year, but you might find it goes on to maybe 15, 18 months, or whatever it may be. That's just the way it works. Workload. Our general advice is that it's typically you need to be working or contributing about 10 hours a week, almost regardless of levels. There's a different variation. I was talking actually to some of our tutor team yesterday about this. But realistically, you need to be allocating a good 7 hours over and above the time you spend each week, whether it's in a classroom-based course or on your e-learning course. But our general advice is if you can find 10 hours a week consistently through the program, then you're going to be in a very good place. And please do not procrastinate. There's certainly, if you're like me with the university, the way I got through was to wait until panic really set in, and then I had a diet of Pro Plus. This was before the days of Red Bull. So please don't procrastinate. Do a little often and you'll get through, and just finding time within your workload to commit to it, and then you'll get the best possible results. Now, there are people obviously do fail. As the higher you go up the program, the failure rate does increase, not surprisingly. It is no shame, particularly at the higher levels, and it's quite straightforward. You can then just retake at the next exam board or a subsequent exam board. It's not like some professional qualifications, like some accountancy qualifications, where you have to pass everything in one hit. That's not the case. If you realize, this is quite a significant one, if you realize that if you're at the wrong level, for example, you might have come in at diploma level. We've had instances where maybe another study center has advised them to go in at diploma level, and they realize that's possibly not right for them. Then, by all means, don't worry about pride. You can come down to to the certificate level. That's absolutely fine. That applies right the way through. Equally, you might find that you've gone in at certificate level and you realize that you know it. So talk to your study center and see what ways you can go to the higher level. as I say, is a modular approach, so there is a lot of flexibility built into the program, and different study centres will have slightly different approaches to it, but it will amount to much the same thing. When can you start? As I mentioned earlier on, in reality, the next proper intake will be, for most study centres, around September. Some e-learning programs will start sooner than that, but in reality, the next assessment board won't be until December. There are different mechanisms to study, whether it's classroom-based. There's a raft of study centres who specialise in that. There are e-learning, and then there is blended learning, which is a mix of e-learning and classroom-based. So some study centres offer intensive, say, weekend courses or Saturday courses, what have you. So again, have a look at the listing of different study centres and see not just geographically what's most appropriate to you and most suitable, but also find out as much as you can about the different delivery mechanisms and make sure that they are right for you. So some people prefer a lecture style, some people prefer more of a workshop approach with smaller groups. Again, ask those questions to find out, what is most important to you. So a typical question might be, what's the maximum class size? Now, that might not be relevant to you if you like large lecture style delivery, but it'd be very relevant to you if you like more of a workshop approach. Equally, if it's e-learning, ask questions about, the level of support that you're getting, and get really granular about actually what type of support you're going to get. And then the final question is choosing between different study centres. Again, look at geography. Pricing, obviously, there are quite significant variations in prices between different types of study centres. And generally, you will tend to get more for paying more. That's not necessarily the case with everybody, but really find out actually what you're getting for your money. And the big variable, as we generally advise, is to find out specifically the level of support that you're going to get on your work-based assignments, because that's where there are quite significant variations in approach between different study centres. We'd also advise that you, if possible, visit the study centres physically, particularly if you're going to some sort of classroom-based, or there's an element of classroom-based activity, so that you can actually see for yourself actually the types of facilities and whether they're appropriate for you, and find out as well about the types of tutors that you're going to get. So, find out about their credentials, how up to date are their CVs, and find out actually who's going to talk to you, and by all means check them out on LinkedIn just to make sure that they're credible. So, bit of advice there. Those are the FAQs. I know that some questions have been posted at the other end. So, Sherry, do you want to come in with any questions that perhaps possibly I can deal with, or maybe you guys can at your end?
Thank you, Quinton. We're now going to answer some of the questions that have been submitted during today's presentation. As a reminder, you can still submit your questions via the chat box in the attendee control panel. Quinton, our first question comes from Grace, who asks, is the certificate in professional marketing easy to undertake whilst working full-time?
Good question, Grace. From our point of view, with our own study centre, all our candidates are in full-time employment. So again, this is to emphasise that because the CIM is really a professional qualification, whilst you can study some levels at university, to get the most out of it, certainly from my opinion, certainly at the higher levels, if you're working within an organisation, you'll get a lot out of it. So at certificate level, yeah, all our candidates are in current employment, but that's not wholly exceptional, but reasonably exceptional for our organisation. But you'll get an awful lot out of the program. You've just got to find time within your diary to, as I suggest, find sort of 7 to 10 hours a week, whether that's blocking out one day a weekend or doing 1 hour a day or whatever it may be. But yeah, it's absolutely designed to fit into your lifestyle. So yeah, short answer is yes, definitely.
And our next question comes from Katrina. She asks, is the diploma in professional marketing the equivalent of an undergraduate degree?
Yes, technically, Katrina, it is a level 6 qualification, which these are the UK education standards. So that is, as my understanding, but somebody from CIM might clarify this further, is that the diploma is the equivalent of a final year degree course. So yeah, it's a level 6 qualification. I don't know, at your end, Shuri, if there's anybody else who wants to clarify anything on that?
No, that's great. So we'll take one more question, and that question comes from Rianne. It is, are assessments marked by the study centre or by CIM?
Good question, Rianne. It used to be the case that we did the first marking, but that's for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years. That's not the case. So it is fully independently marked by an exam board at CIM, and I know the academic rigour, the process rigours are very, very tight. They are fully regulated. So yes, you are independently assessed.
Thank you, Quinton. And thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. And we apologize to anyone who had difficulty accessing the audio for this webinar. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email us at qualifications@cim.co.uk, as I can see many of you are still submitting your questions on the control panel. Once you leave today's webinar, you'll receive a survey on the presentation, and we'd appreciate if you could complete that and provide your feedback. You'll also receive a follow-up email within the next couple of days with a link to view the recording of today's webinar. Just a reminder that you can find out more about CIM qualifications by visiting our website, which is cim.co.uk/qualifications. On behalf of CIM and Quinton, thank you for joining us today, and have a great rest of your afternoon.